Have you ever had a day where you just wanted to sit by the water and fish, but then someone crazy shows up and tries to ruin everything? Well, that's exactly what happened to me at sunset, Lake, one quiet Sunday morning. I thought I'd spend the day catching fish and enjoying the sunshine. Instead, I got into a big fight with the worst HOA boss lady you've ever seen. She carried a big folder of papers everywhere and wore fancy clothes like she was the queen of the neighborhood. Her name was Margaret, and boy, was she mean. So there I was, sitting on my wooden dock with my dad's old fishing pole. The water was calm and pretty, with little clouds floating above it. I had my morning coffee and felt so happy and peaceful. Then I heard loud footsteps coming down my dirt path. Stomp, stomp, stomp. At first, I didn't look up because who gets mad at 7 in the morning by a beautiful lake? But the footsteps got closer and closer. Suddenly, this angry lady appeared at my dock like she owned the whole place. She didn't even say good morning or hello like nice people do. She just started yelling at me right away. She held up her big red folder like it was a magic wand. "Hey, you," she said in a really mean voice. "This lake area belongs to everyone in the neighborhood. You need to pack up your stuff and leave right now." She talked to me like I was a bad guy who was stealing something. But I've been fishing at this exact spot since I was a teenager. Have you ever met someone who thinks they're the boss of everything? That was Margaret. She thought she knew all the rules, even when she was totally wrong. I let her finish being mean to me, trying not to laugh out loud. Then I told her very nicely, "Thanks for telling me, but I'm staying right here." That made her stop talking for a few seconds. But then she got even more angry and started waving her folder around, saying she would call the police. Right then, my old neighbor Bob walked by. Bob has lived here longer than anyone, and nothing ever makes him worried. He looked at me and said just loud enough for me to hear, "She's yelling at the wrong person, buddy." Margaret spun around super fast, but Bob just kept walking like nothing happened. That man is awesome. Anyway, Margaret kept throwing rules at me and acting like I was a bad guy. So I stood up tall, looked right at her, and said, "This little cabin has been in my family for many, many years. Maybe you should check those papers again." I had a special old letter from my grandpa in my fishing box, and I put it in my pocket. She was so sure she was right. She didn't see the property marker hiding in the tall grass. But I did. I thought, let's see what happens next. 2 days later, she came back with even more papers. Official warnings, big fines, and threats to kick me out. She dropped a $2,000 fine on my tackle box like it was a bomb. She looked so happy with herself. I almost felt sorry for her when I told her I would give everything to my lawyer. Her big smile disappeared super fast. "You're trying to scare me with lawyers," she screamed. It was like watching a cartoon character. When she realized her scary papers wouldn't work on me, she called the cops right in front of me. She made sure I could hear every word she said. She told them I was on her land and being mean to her, like I was some dangerous monster. Part of me wondered how the police would handle this crazy situation. About 15 minutes later, 2 police cars drove up to my cabin. Margaret was jumping up and down like a little kid on Christmas morning. She dragged the officers down to my dock. They were young guys who looked bored, but they were doing their job. "Sir, someone says you don't belong here. One officer told me." I just smiled and asked them to sit down. Margaret was going crazy, demanding they arrest me right now. But the officers ignored her and asked me how I was connected to this place. That's when I pulled out my special envelope. Inside was the original deed to my property from way before the HOA even existed, plus a handwritten note from my grandpa explaining that I had special rights to use the shoreline. No HOA could tell me what to do here. The officer looked at the old property marker in the weeds, checked the numbers, and turned to Margaret. "Ma'am, this man OWNS this property fair and square. You called us for no reason." Margaret went from super angry to completely shocked. Her whole world just fell apart right there on my dock. She tried to argue and make excuses, but the officers weren't listening anymore. They warned her about calling police when nothing was wrong, then left me alone to fish in peace. She just stood there looking defeated, mumbling that this fight wasn't over yet. You'd think the story would end there, right? But if you've ever dealt with someone like Margaret, you know the drama was just beginning. Suddenly, someone was cutting my fishing lines and dumping soap in the water. My trash can got knocked over and moved around. It was silly, childish stuff, but annoying enough to make my life difficult. Then she started telling lies about me online, saying I was a dangerous weirdo who lived alone by the lake. She even pretended to be old Bob, and Bob doesn't even know how to use a computer. She got some neighbors to believe I was the worst person in the world. When she collected signatures from 12 people asking to get rid of me, I decided I'd had enough. I called up all my Pine Lake property papers, surveys, buying agreements, and mineral rights. Here's what Margaret didn't know. I spent years quietly buying land around the lake through different business names. By the time she was fighting me over community property, I actually owned 80% of Pine Lake. That included the land her own house was sitting on. The real fun started at the emergency HOA meeting she organized. She was determined to make an example out of me. She had a computer presentation, printed schedules, and photos of my suspicious cabin. But when I walked in late with my briefcase full of maps, the whole room changed. I explained very calmly, without being mean, that I actually owned the land under most of their houses, including the community center we were sitting in. Most people had never read their house agreements carefully. They didn't realize they were renting the land, not buying completely. The whole place went crazy. People were flipping through papers, comparing documents, and realizing their HOA president had been yelling at their actual landlord. Margaret turned green like she was going to be sick. Old Bob laughed so hard, he almost fell off his chair. All the fight went out of Margaret instantly. After that, everything around Pine Lake became different overnight. Neighbors started talking to each other again. Kids came to fish off my dock. People could walk around without being scared of getting fined for having a weed in their driveway. Margaret, on the other hand, became someone nobody wanted to talk to. She had a meltdown on Facebook and called news stations, but nobody cared. Her whole life story came out then. She had grown up losing homes and was always scared of being pushed out. Her need to control everything and her mission to protect the neighborhood was really just fear in disguise. But scared people sometimes make terrible choices. When I mentioned upgrading the water and electricity during a chat with Bob, Margaret was listening and went ballistic. She accused me of planning to turn off everyone's water and power. She claimed I was trying to kick everyone out in secret. I tried to calm her down, but she was beyond reason. Then late one night, my security cameras went off. Margaret, drunk and out of her mind, was sneaking around my dock with a gas can and lighter. She was about to burn down the thing I care about most, my grandfather's old bamboo fishing pole, when the police showed up just in time. She got arrested for trying to start a fire, still screaming about conspiracies and plots. Her trial was like a circus. Her lawyer said she was temporarily crazy. Margaret talked for hours about community rights and accidentally got herself in even more trouble. The prosecution dropped the biggest surprise of all. I didn't just own the land. I also own Pine Lake Utilities and have been paying part of everyone's bills. That news completely broke her. The judge gave her probation, community service, cleaning the shoreline, a restraining order, and mandatory counseling sessions. The first Saturday after her sentencing, I watched her in her orange safety vest picking up trash while I fished in perfect peace. Every time I waved at her, she glared back angrily, but eventually she stopped being so mad. Months went by. She got softer and nicer. She did her work and even joined a volunteer cleanup after her punishment ended. We never became friends, but I think she found a little peace too. Maybe she learned something important. Maybe we all did. The funny thing is, Pine Lake is better now than it's ever been. People look out for each other. The lake is clean and sparkly. And sometimes, just sometimes, you see Margaret quietly picking up litter with no clipboard in sight. My grandpa used to say, the best fishing takes patience, sometimes for years. I guess he was absolutely right. So tell me, what would you have done if you were me? When does getting justice turn into showing mercy? Let's hear your wildest HOA stories and what you think about how everything turned out. Because in the end, Community is about more than property lines and rules. And sometimes karma has a really, really good memory.